Hollywood loves a sure thing. If a movie makes money, you can bet your last dollar a studio executive is already dreaming of a sequel. It's a tradition as old as the silver screen itself. But what happens when nobody wants that sequel? Not the director, not the stars, and certainly not the audience. It sounds like a recipe for disaster, a cynical cash grab destined for the bargain bin of film history. Yet, sometimes against all odds, these unwanted children of cinema grow up to become legends. When James Whale's Frankenstein horrified and fascinated audiences in 1931, it was a sensation. It made Boris Karloff a star and cemented Universal Pictures as the king of horror. The problem? James Whale wanted nothing to do with it. He felt he had told the complete story of Mary Shelley's tragic creation. For years, Universal tried to lure him back, but Whale resisted, viewing a sequel as a step backward in his career. And in the throes of the Great Depression, Universal couldn't afford to leave that kind of money on the table. The turning point came when Universal offered Whale something he couldn't refuse: complete creative control. If he had to make a sequel, he was going to make it his way. What made Bride of Frankenstein so unexpectedly brilliant was its tone. Where the original was a somber gothic tragedy, the sequel was witty, flamboyant, and surprisingly funny. The monster, who had been a largely silent figure, was now given the ability to speak. His first words, taught to him by a blind hermit in a beautifully touching sequence, transformed him from a simple monster into a profoundly sympathetic character. Whale, along with his brilliant production team, created a world that was even more stylized and expressionistic than the first. Elsa Lanchester's performance as the bride is a masterclass in physical acting. She's on screen for only a few minutes, but her hissing, shrieking rejection of the monster is one of the most memorable scenes in all of horror cinema. Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather was more than a movie. It was a cultural phenomenon. It won the Oscar for Best Picture in 1973 and redefined the gangster genre. So when Paramount Pictures inevitably came knocking for a sequel, Coppola's answer was a firm no. He felt he had already fought and won his battles with the studio to make the first film his way, and he had no desire to go through that grueling process again. So, they made him an offer that was impossible to refuse. They gave him unprecedented power. He would not only direct but also have the final cut, the ability to title it The Godfather Part 2, and a hefty financial stake. The creative breakthrough came when he landed on a radical new structure. Instead of just moving forward, he would also go backward. The search led Coppola to a relatively unknown actor named Robert De Niro. The genius of The Godfather Part 2 lies in its daring structure. By intertwining Michael's descent with Vito's ascent, Coppola created a profound and devastating cinematic dialogue. Al Pacino's performance is central to the film's success. His portrayal of Michael is, honestly, one of the great haunting character studies in cinema. In the second, we witness his soul slowly dying. Pacino's stillness is terrifying. His eyes, empty and cold, convey a man who has gained the world but lost everything that ever mattered to him. Ultimately, The Godfather Part 2 did the impossible. It became the first sequel ever to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. It proved that a sequel could be a work of art in its own right, capable of standing shoulder to shoulder with, and in the eyes of many, even surpassing its predecessor. After Star Wars exploded into a global phenomenon in 1977, a sequel was not just expected, it was demanded. George Lucas, however, was exhausted. The production of the first film had been a stressful, grueling experience that had taken a toll on his health. To fund the sequel, he made a risky bet. He decided to finance the film largely with his own money, using earnings from the first film and a substantial bank loan. He turned to his old mentor from USC, Irvin Kershner. Initially, Kershner turned the offer down, reportedly telling Lucas, "I don't think you can ever equal the first one." The creative direction of the sequel was also a point of concern. Lucas and his co-writer Lawrence Kasdan planned a story that would defy audience expectations. It would be darker, more somber, and would end on a cliffhanger. There would be no medal ceremony, no triumphant celebration. The heroes would be beaten, scattered, and left in a state of despair. The reason The Empire Strikes Back became a masterpiece is precisely because it dared to be different. It chose to go dark. Han Solo and Princess Leia's bickering romance blossomed into something genuine and heartbreaking, culminating in the unforgettable "I love you, I know" exchange. The introduction of Yoda is a perfect example of the film's brilliance. When Luke crash lands on the swamp planet of Dagobah, he meets a small, quirky, and seemingly annoying little creature. The reveal that this silly puppet is, in fact, the wise and powerful Jedi Master is a masterful subversion of expectations. Of course, you can't talk about Empire without talking about its shocking twist, one of the best-kept secrets in film history. The revelation that Darth Vader is Luke's father is a seismic moment that redefines the entire saga. Mark Hamill was told just moments before filming the scene, and his raw, devastated reaction is completely genuine. George Miller's Mad Max, released in 1979, was a raw, gritty, and shockingly violent film made on a shoestring budget in the Australian outback. For many, it was a self-contained revenge story. Max Rockatansky, a policeman driven to the edge, had lost his family and avenged their deaths. His story felt tragically complete. Miller himself was initially hesitant to return to that world. He had moved on to other projects, but the imagery of the wasteland and the lone figure of Max continued to haunt him. He was inspired by the archetypal stories of the lone wanderer, drawing from Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces and classic American westerns like Shane. The production of what would become Mad Max 2 or The Road Warrior in the United States was even more ambitious and dangerous than the first. The film's legendary final chase sequence was a logistical nightmare, a symphony of vehicular chaos that was performed for real without the safety net of computer-generated imagery. What makes The Road Warrior an all-time classic is its purity of vision. It is a masterclass in visual storytelling. The film has very little dialogue. Max himself only has a handful of lines. Instead, George Miller tells his story through action, motion, and kinetic energy. The Road Warrior single-handedly defined the look and feel of the post-apocalyptic genre for decades to come. This framing device elevates Max into the realm of myth, a nameless stranger who rode in, saved a community, and rode off again, just like the heroes of old westerns. From Bride of Frankenstein to The Road Warrior, these films teach us a valuable lesson. They prove that sequels don't have to be lazy, uninspired cash grabs. These 4 films, all born from doubt and reluctance, not only silenced their skeptics but also changed film history. They stand as shining examples of how the story nobody thought needed telling can become the one we can't imagine living without, forever earning the last laugh.